So there's a lot of signs down here. I'm not going to just stare at these and read these, but essentially it just says credits. That song was LSDJ, Better Off Alone. It was played from this. This is the whole song right here on the bottom. This is just crazy weird optimization information so the server owner doesn't get upset with me. It's really well optimized, so most of the circuitry is basically just doing my best not to be a nuisance to the server and to let it be efficient. Now when you look at this, you're going to be like, oh, there's so much, it looks so messy, there's so much redstone dust, and you know, this definitely could be more compact and all that. And you know, that's true. It's a lot harder working with this in survival than it is in creative, which is where I sort of prototyped the general design. So basically what all this circuitry is, and above the top floor is basically the same thing as right on this floor, except adapted for the dance floor. This one here is for the note block song. So what these do is it just controls how the note block song operates, and also how the buttons to activate it operate. So when you press the button to activate the dance floor, or not the dance floor, but the note block song, it's a bit wild. So I have some signs here that talk about it, but basically, as soon as you press that button, the button is disabled because this blocks off the signal. So the button can literally do nothing while the song is running. The song runs for a certain amount of loops, which is actually 4, as dictated by the counter in here. And once that is over, it stops by this piston pushing over here, which blocks the signal and just stops the loop. And then it also, at the same time, pushes this piston into here. And what this is it holds a charge. So when you press the button to activate the song, what it does is it sends a pulse through here. This pulse gets held in here because of just the wacky way that redstone works. And this gets held into a charge, so it's just in the on state until this breaks it off at the end of the song. And so the purpose of that is to keep this piston held in place. Since we're using a button and not a lever for various reasons, we do have to use the charge holding method here to hold this piston in place and block off this signal so that when you press the button while the song is running, it does absolutely nothing. So people can't spam it and abuse it, or, you know, run 2 songs at the same time or whatever. That would be bad. That would sound terrible. And at the end of the song also, no, that's all it does. So this counter, I did not invent this. I'm not smart enough to do this. I still don't really know how comparators work, or however you pronounce those things, but it's just a counter. The input is right here, so every time that lights up, it sends a little pulse every now and then, and the counter increments by 1, or it actually decrements, I suppose. It essentially just takes one object or whatever from in here and puts it into this hopper, and once that hopper is all filled up, it then unloads back into here while this torch lights up. And once it's done unloading, the torch unlights. So this torch goes to this piston, which breaks off this charge. And this here is just to ensure that the piston is held here long enough. So it does it once, and then it does it again like a moment later, just to make sure it's held for long enough to break the charge, because redstone is very silly. And so yeah, when you press the button to activate the song, this sends through here, and it immediately goes over here all the way around. This is all wacky looking, and this just goes straight into the song. It just starts playing the song in sequence, and every time it loops, it comes back around here. This is the very end. It comes and it loops back around and goes to here, unless this is blocking it. And what it also does is, a short time before it hits, this route or this area, is it activates this. And what this is this is the thing that increments the counter. And so it tells, if we're at the very end of the 4 loops, and I do 4 just because music, I guess, it just ends up sounding the best that way. Oh, and the reason I'm limiting the amount of time it takes and putting buttons and everything is because I don't want to like have it be a lever and have somebody switch on the lever and then never turn it off. And then not only is that going to be like a nuisance to the neighbors around here, but very bad for server resources, you know. And I think 4 is just a good amount. It's about 26 seconds, so it's long enough to enjoy the song or whatever and have a good time without it being incessant and overplayed and whatnot. But yeah, that just right before the end of each loop of the song, it increments the counter and or decrements. And on the very last loop, it does it just early enough here. You can see it's not right at the very end. It's just before the very end. It does it just early enough for it to activate this piston before it gets to the very end. Otherwise, it'll just do one more loop because this won't kick in early enough. So that's what that does. So anyway, this is basically the entire note block song portion of this. If you want to just see how this works, it's really pretty simple. It's just these repeaters go into these blocks, which charge these blocks, which activates a redstone dust, a single redstone dust dot. Not dot, but thing below here. It's just a single redstone dust. Which activates the note blocks surrounding this block. And each note block is just timed very well. I actually sequenced this not manually. Like, this would have taken a very long time to do this manually. I used something called Note Block Studio to sequence it much like you would in like a regular digital audio workstation or composing, you know, program. So I just sequenced the song. So I made the song manually by ear. And yeah, see these little dots. Redstone is really weird, honestly. I think what happens is it goes to this, it charges this, which charges this and this, which activate note blocks surrounding this, and also on the top as well. And so each of these have different instruments attached to them. And the program that generated them didn't kind of really put too much rhyme or reason, I think, behind, you know, the exact positioning of these. They're kind of different every once in a while, but yeah, basically it just sort of happens to work out. And these repeaters, I had to set these all manually to be the exact right timings for the song. And the song is actually sped up a little bit because of the way that Minecraft's tick rate works. Minecraft runs at 20 ticks per second, or ideally 20 ticks per second. You can actually see on the top left, it says TPS, and that's the server TPS. It's not exact unless the server provides that information, which this one doesn't. So this one kind of is guessing. Well, it's not guessing, but it's not getting the exact precise data. But right now, there's only a few people on. So the TPS is probably something like 19.9 or something. So it's not exactly 19.0. But yeah, so 20 ticks a second. So the song sort of has to be at a tempo that's divisible by that. So this song in particular is, I don't remember the exact tempo, but basically things tick at like half, I think, the maximum tick rate. So if you noticed when I was listening to it, it's kind of jerky. Like it doesn't exactly reflect the perfect tempo. It's a little like some beats are a little off, a little delayed or a little early or whatever. And that's just a limitation of the game engine. Unfortunately, you can't really get it perfect. In single player, it's more likely to be pretty much close to perfect, but on a server, it's especially going to be a little bit more flawed. So anyway, this is the top. It's basically the same thing, but ugly, hideous. And this here is not even supposed to be here, so I'll just try to walk through what this is. This is the dance floor. You can see this whole thing here, this whole big box is the dance floor. These repeaters under here light up, and every time they light up, these observers, which observe block changes, send a pulse to a redstone lamp directly above them. And this sort of, okay, it's hard to go through this when there's this thing in the way. I just recently added this and it's honestly pointless. I'll break it later, but basically this right here is a redstone clock. It just goes in a loop at a fixed tempo or whatever you want to call it. This is not really related to the song at all. This is just dance floor stuff. All of this up here is for the dance floor. So it just goes in a circle, it goes in a circle, it goes in a circle. And every single time it goes in a circle and loops, it increments this counter. Every single time. This one has a much higher count. And that means that every time it empties after it finishes, after it finishes, this contents from the hopper go into the dropper, you know, to restart again, or to, you know, be reset for next time it starts. It takes a lot longer to reset than the one downstairs. So I had to use a different method of changing the state of the piston that blocks the button from being activated. So you can actually see right here, we're right below the club, and the note block song button is right here. It goes all the way downstairs. It doesn't mess with this circuitry at all. It's totally out of the way. And then here's the dance floor button, and this circuitry comes here, and it goes into this dip, which can be cut off by this grass block pushed by this piston. This piston can only be activated by this redstone connected to this torch, which is always on, except this, and I know this is probably all weird and rudimentary, and I really didn't look online for anything like this. I just kind of came up with this garbage. But these are not sticky pistons, these two. Everything else is sticky except for these two. And essentially I had to design it so that they don't ever push into each other. You know, one has to retract before the other pushes the other way. But essentially they sort of push this cobble back and forth depending on if we want this to be on or off. And the reason that we did that is because this piston, while that is unloading, needs to be held much, much, much longer than the one downstairs, right at the end of the loop, right, or the whole thing. Because while that's unloading, we don't want people to be able to press the button and reactivate the thing again when it's not ready. So the thing down here, all this one needed instead was this. This is essentially this one's version of that weird switch that I just showed with the non-sticky pistons, where all it needs is just a little bit of time. It really just needs like a second or two. So this was sufficient enough for that to keep the piston held for that long, where it just sends a delay and holds it a little extra long. You know, otherwise I would have had to, well, essentially make that, but have it have like 10, maybe 20 more like those little circuits like that of delay, you know, that just doesn't make any sense, especially working in this area that is very, very cramped, as you can tell. You know, it's funny because this whole circuit looked a lot simpler in creative when I was like designing it. And then I had to actually implement it in the survival world. And this is a server, you know, in an area where it's a little cramped space-wise. Like, we have claims here, so we can claim territory and not have it be modifiable by other players. And I have to be really careful not to overclaim, you know what I mean? Like, I have to not overstep where I claim, so I have to really keep everything compact. Because I built this in between some buildings that I don't own, so I have to keep it contained. So I had to really keep it cramped, and unfortunately it led to a lot of really, really wonky design decisions on like routing, redstone. Like, you see, all these repeaters here are only repeaters instead of dust because they're adjacent to dust and they can't be connected to the dust. So because repeaters are only one way and they can't be gotten to from the sides or whatever, these are only repeaters because I can't have it connecting to the adjacent redstone. It's all very silly stuff like that, you know. Like this here is just weird the way it is. Like, why is this below here, you know? Every single block choice here has a very, very distinct like choice behind it. or reasoning behind it, and it's all a complete and utter mess. But it is a well thought out mess, and anybody who's remotely good at redstone is going to completely puke at the sight of this. And honestly, I am too, because I am not good at redstone, but I'm puking anyway. But yeah, that's basically it. If you want to talk about how this works, I mean, essentially it runs in a loop, it runs in a loop, it runs in a loop for a set amount of counts. Once it's done, much like the one below, this piston is activated, which blocks off the signal, which prevents it from looping anymore, and then the charge dies out. But while it is looping, every single loop just sends a pulse essentially through these repeaters, which go this way. And because there are observers here watching these, every single time these change state, it sends a pulse through here in a line. So each single one sends a pulse in a line. And because these repeaters are on a delay of a certain kind, you know, repeaters delay, it ends up that this one activates, then this one activates, then this one activates, you know, timed. And same with this. This one activates, then this one activates, then this one activates. And it ends up looking kind of like a wave pattern when you turn it on and look at the lamps above. And it ends up just looking really cool. And it's pretty like network efficient, because repeaters are generally very network efficient compared to like redstone dust. Redstone dust has I forget what it's called exactly, but like power levels, right? Like charge levels. It goes up to 15 and down to 0, I guess. And so every time one of these changes state, it has to, and I might be totally a little bit wrong on the specifics here, but every time one of these changes states, it has to check its surroundings and, you know, see what its power level should be and what it is and how that influences things around it and stuff like that. But the repeaters don't really have to do that, because they're always going to be at the full power level of 15. Because they are repeaters, you know, they are sort of generators of charge, I guess you could say. But that is basically the entire thing here. It's a complete and total mess, and I'm getting claustrophobic up here, so I'm just going to come down. And if you want to just go see it one more time, I don't think I missed anything down there. I think I got all of it. It's just my little maintenance shaft. I made a little pool up there. I don't really know why. I think, like, architecturally that makes no sense. The ceiling would cave in, but you know, it sure is cool to look at. Da swimming pool. And you got this kitty, very, very nice kitty. The eyes are kind of silly looking, but he perching. I can't exactly tell if he's enjoying being in the water or if he's trying to get out, but I guess that's up to you to decide. I would say he's having a good time. It's the swimming pool. And yeah, basically that's it. So if you want me to demonstrate just how well designed this is, I guess. Pressing it again, absolutely nothing. Does not trigger any circuitry whatsoever, except for just like 4 redstone dust that does nothing. Same with the song. Press it twice, doesn't start playing again, doesn't crash it. If I spam it, doesn't do anything. I made sure these are wood buttons just so I can adjust the timings, you know, to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And you know, you can take music discs and put them into the jukebox if you want. See, the song ends after 4 loops. I think that's a decent amount of time to end it. Maybe I could have done 8, but I think 4 is fine. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, Snowman. I had to build him in here, and he can't get out because he can't crouch or sneak or whatever, so... also, I put these carpets here so he doesn't snow up the place when he does go onto that block. Or he goes above it, I guess. He kind of doesn't really go onto it, but it does snow it up unless I put that there. And yeah, I think it looks really beautiful with shaders. If you turn off shaders, it does not do the same thing. Like, the entire place really just does not look anywhere near as presentable. You can see what shaders I'm using in the bottom left. It says it right there. They're pretty old and outdated, I think, but they tend to work really well for the most part, I think. They are my favorites, and I have made some tweaks to them, but I won't be showing those off right now. Oh, these are speakers, by the way, if you couldn't tell. Oh, yeah. All right, cheers, I guess. See you later.